CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wilson. Our top stories this hour. The coffin of Queen Elizabeth II arrives at her official Scottish residence, Holyrood House, where it will lie at rest in the throne room. The Queen's final journey began hundreds of kilometres away in Balmoral. Thousands of people lined the route to see the procession. And tens of thousands of people across the UK continue to pay their respects to the monarch, laying floral tributes. In other news, UN monitors say backup power has been restored to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, while Ukrainian forces retake control of more ground in the northeast. In the past hour, the Queen's coffin has arrived at Holyrood House in the Scottish capital. On Sunday morning, the royal procession left Balmoral Castle, the royal residence where she passed away on Thursday, taking around 6 hours to complete the 280-kilometre journey south to Edinburgh. On the way, the cortege passed through a string of towns and villages with thousands of people lining parts of the route to pay their respects to the monarch. The Queen's state funeral will be held on September the 19th at Westminster Abbey in London. Well, our correspondent, Naweed Jabakal, is live for us in Edinburgh. Naweed, talk us through this final journey starting out at Balmoral.
Yeah, leaving Balmoral Castle, which is where the Queen passed away on Thursday, Andrew, and making its way further north to Aberdeen, another big city on the northeast coast of Scotland, and then going down to Dundee and Perth, two other cities before, in the last half an hour or so, coming here to Holyrood House Palace. That's the building you can see behind me. It's the official residence of the British monarch here in Scotland. All along that journey, almost 300 kilometres, as you say, it stopped in town, past towns and villages where local residents from all across other parts of Scotland came to pay their respects to the Queen. Here in Edinburgh, we were out on the streets of the capital, the Royal Mile, the main part of the capital. That was filled with thousands of people. Slowly throughout the day they came, not just from here in Edinburgh, but from other parts of Scotland again, and indeed tourists. Some people who were here when this coincidentally happened found themselves coming to essentially witness history and be a part of it. So the coffin was brought here, taken inside. It was greeted by three of the Queen's children, Princess Anne, who followed behind that funeral cortege in the car behind the hearse that took the Queen's coffin, and two of her sons, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward. And King Charles, her eldest son, he'll be here tomorrow, we understand, to come where her body will lie in state. But we went out onto the streets to gain a sense of just why people felt moved to come. Have a listen.
I think she's just been here all of her lives, and now she's not, so...
Quite a bit nervous and quite a bit upset because she died.
And why are you upset?
Because the Queen died and I had no clue that she would.
Yeah, I think, you know, you can't plan anything, but I think what a fitting end in a way that to the place that she really liked to come to and enjoy, that we get the opportunity to say goodbye, you know.
And we just saw those pictures of the coffin being carried on the shoulders of the guard as they took it into Holyrood House, where it lays at rest now, we think, for about 24 hours. What else can we expect?
Yeah, well, that guard of honour happening just behind my shoulder before the coffin was taken inside. It will stay here for about 24 hours before moving further up the Royal Mile, that road that we were on, where you heard those voices from, up to the other end, to St Giles Cathedral, to lie in state there for another 24 hours or so. That's when King Charles III, the new monarch, will be expected in Edinburgh. From there, it will then move on Tuesday down to London with Princess Anne. We understand that she's going to travel with the coffin coffin down to London, and then that's when things move from the smaller scale here in Scotland to a much larger one in London. It will lie in state for 4 days up until the 19th in Westminster in central London, and then that's all-important state funeral on next Monday, a week on Monday. But really, it has been a fairly emotional day here in Scotland. You sense that just walking around. When the coffin came in, there was pin-drop silence after a round of applause. As soon as it made its way into the palace grounds, there was complete pin-drop silence, which is something you really don't hear in the modern world much. And you just have to think about the impact this is going to have on the UK as a country. Just in front of Holyrood Palace is Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament, a devolved government here in Scotland, and you just wonder what impact this is going to have on the strength of unionism here at a time when other voices would like an independent Scotland. It may have a lasting impact yet. Andrew.
Naweed, thanks very much indeed. Naweed Jabakal there in Edinburgh for us. And of course, the twin focuses for these operations, the laying to rest of one monarch and the succession of another. The other focus, of course, being London. Our correspondent, Kimberly Lim, is outside Buckingham Palace for us. Kimberly, what's been happening at Buckingham Palace today?
Hi, Andrew. Yes, I mean, there's been an awful lot of comings and goings here today at Buckingham Palace. Quite a few dignitaries have come to meet the new King Charles III. We had earlier the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth, Baroness Patricia Scotland. She came. We also had 14 High Commissioners from the countries where King Charles III is still head of state. And also the Dean of Windsor came to meet with the new King. And the Dean of Windsor, of course, is going to oversee the interment of Queen Elizabeth II's body at the St George's Chapel in Windsor come the state funeral on September 19th. But, I mean, again, we are seeing very big crowds of people here at Buckingham Palace and the surrounding area today. They've come in their tens of thousands to pay their respects to a much-loved monarch. And also, I mean, the crowd that greeted King Charles when he arrived, and also the Queen Consort Camilla, big cheers for the new king. And as you said in your intro, Andrew, there are some incredible floral tributes that are taking place around Buckingham Palace. Earlier I went to take a look at them and spoke with some of the people who have turned up here to show their respect. Well, here we are in Green Park, which is one of the royal parks and one of the official areas designated for the floral tributes. And as you can see behind me, the tributes, they keep on coming. There are already tens of thousands of people here in Green Park and the surrounding areas, which is just a stone's throw away from Buckingham Palace. And these people, they're really coming from all walks of life, young, old, families, people who have come from nearby, people who have come from far, all really wanting to show their respect for a much-loved monarch. And reading some of the messages here, there's a lot of very personal notes, a lot of gratitude in there, thanks and respect, which really reflects the diverse reach that Queen Elizabeth II had.
I feel like a grandmother died, stuff like that. So like it's nice to see what she have done so far and what the monarchy have done so far for the UK so far. So it's paying respect to the crown and to the people.
The Queen was like, to the world, she was like a grandmother, and we wanted to pay our respect and say goodbye the way we could. And my friends here came from Italy to do that too. They were planned to come here, and this said thing happened. And yeah, we decided to take some time off today to pay our respects to the Queen.
She's always been that kind of steadfast presence throughout my 26 years, but like throughout my dad's life, through everyone's lives.
I went to her coronation, and I saw her. We're going up to the coronation. It was beautiful. That's when we was at school. So that was the beginning. This is the ending.
The Queen has always been a symbol there, and she's always the evidence of the world history, remind us how the past is. So it's quite a symbolic thing. I think it's not only to the UK, but also to the whole of the world. Yeah.
We knew the Queen because we grew up with her. We are a Commonwealth country, as you know, and so we didn't want to miss this opportunity to come and lay some flowers to her.
And that's just a sample, Andrew, of the incredible sentiment that we've seen for the much-loved monarch, and we're certainly expecting to see an awful lot more of that in the coming few days.
The UN monitor says backup power has been restored to Ukraine's largest nuclear power plant, allowing it to cool its reactors and averting fears of a catastrophic meltdown. Russian forces have occupied the Zaporizhzhia plant since March, with both sides accusing each other of reckless shelling, risking a radiation leak. Local Ukrainian staff say operations have been halted as a safety step. It comes as Ukrainian forces say they're making huge gains in their bid to retake Russian-occupied territory in the east. Our correspondent, Julia Chapman, is live in the capital, Kiev, for us. Julia, good to talk to you. How significant do you think this is about the reactor?
Well, it certainly is a big moment because it allows the operators to bring the plant into what they call a cold shutdown. Now, for days, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant has been disconnected from Ukraine's power grid. It was reconnected late on Saturday night, and the atomic powers here in Ukraine took advantage of that window to shut down the last operating reactor. So that means it will be now running at a very low temperature, at a very low pressure, and it won't be generating any energy itself. Now, this doesn't bring it entirely out of danger, but what it does do is allow employees operating the plant a much larger margin, much larger amount of time if there is any kind of meltdown, if it does disconnect from the power supply, they'll be able to avert any kind of major crisis. Now, it does still need a consistent power supply, and that is far from guaranteed, with shelling still being reported in the area. But we do understand from Ukraine's energy regulators that they have made arrangements. Sorry, you can hear the air raid siren over me, but the nuclear powers say they have made arrangements and are trying to get more diesel generators down to Zaporizhzhia to ensure that there is enough energy to continue running the plant, even if it isn't able to be connected to the power network.
Julia, what about this advance that the Ukrainian forces are making in the northeast? That still seems to be forging ahead.
It does indeed. Today we've heard from the commander of the armed forces of Ukraine, who says that so far they have taken 3,000 square kilometers of territory back from Russian control just in the last few days. This is all in the northeastern Kharkiv region. But of course, officials very keen to maintain that momentum, to make sure that they are able to hold on to the newly retaken areas in the east of the country. We heard today from the defense minister, Alexei Reznikov, who says that they don't want to push and advance too far because that would expose them to possibly being surrounded by Russian forces. But efforts are now being made to demine some of these areas to make sure they are safe for the populations that do remain there, and they are continuing their offensive in the east.
Julia, thanks very much indeed. Julia Chapman there, live for us in Kiev. Still to come on CGTN, celebrations continue for China's three-day Mid-Autumn Festival, celebrated with mooncakes and family reunions.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines today. UN monitors say backup power has been restored to the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, while Ukrainian forces retake control of more ground in the northeast. The coffin of Queen Elizabeth II arrives at her official Scottish residence, Holyrood House, where it will lie at rest in the throne room. And the Queen's final journey began hundreds of kilometres away in Balmoral. Thousands of people lined the route to see the procession. The death of Queen Elizabeth II has reignited debate in Australia over whether or not it should become a republic. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has ruled out holding a referendum during his first term out of deep respect for the Queen. It comes as Australia has joined a growing list of countries in the Commonwealth officially recognising the new UK head of state. Greg Navarro reports now from Sydney.
While many Australians are still getting used to life without Queen Elizabeth, Australia has formally recognised King Charles as its head of state. The proclamation was made in Canberra, the first such ceremony held in the current Parliament House. A band was on hand to play a rendition of God Save the King, an anthem not heard here in this country for 70 years. Flags were temporarily raised to full mast in honour of King Charles and then eventually lowered once again in mourning of Queen Elizabeth.
It's a momentous occasion, and I guess, as we know, he's had plenty of years as an apprentice, so we think he'll make a fabulous king. It's a very sad day to lose the Queen, but I think Australia's in very good hands.
You know, really don't notice much in Australia with the royal family, but it's good that obviously he's going to have some stability and project that stability and the continuance of obviously our head of state, which is the king now.
I'm very supportive of the king. Whether it will spark a referendum in Australia now the Queen has passed, I think that could be a possibility. I would always be in favour of the king and the Commonwealth, but I think Australia may be moving on.
Now, federal parliament has been suspended for 2 weeks in honour of the Queen, and a public holiday has been announced for a national day of mourning to be held on September 22nd. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Sydney.
A series of special events have been held around the US to mark the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks. Close to 3,000 people were killed in coordinated attacks as planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and also the Pentagon. A fourth crashed in Pennsylvania. President Biden laid a wreath at the Pentagon while Vice President Kamala Harris attended a ceremony in New York. Our correspondent John Terrett reports now from New York City.
Americans had not been attacked on their home soil since Pearl Harbor back in 1941, and that, with respect to Hawaii, was not exactly on mainland America. It was far away. This was an attack very much on the homeland, and the point about this is that Americans had been told forever that they were completely safe, secure by the two oceans either side of them, the Atlantic and the Pacific, and then two friendly countries to the north, Canada and Mexico. And they realized on that day that that was no longer true, that those four commercial jets being used effectively as missiles. Now, what is interesting is we now have a whole generation, people graduating university or about to graduate university, either weren't born or have no recollection because they were so young about what happened here. And Americans are very keen to make sure that people don't forget, and that's why they keep coming back time and time again. I think it's interesting to note that the crowd that attends every year, it's smaller than it was 21 years ago or just after that, of course. It's still pretty large, though, and it seems to grow every year because young people come, young people who cannot have been alive or remembered very much at the time this happened, but they come in the stead of their family members who have probably died in the course of the last 20 years. And if I may, I think that to help you understand what you're seeing in the United Kingdom now with the death of Queen Elizabeth II, it sort of is purveying the same thing that happened here, that sense of what just happened? What do we do now? How do we carry on? You're seeing that coming out of the United Kingdom, and that was the mood here 21 years ago, and it still continues to this very day. And finally, I think it's worth pointing out Queen Elizabeth, who is in the news so much at the moment for obvious reasons, did come here. She came to New York 3 times, last in 2010 when she visited the memorial site here, such as it was then, and she met members of the 9/11 families. And crucially, on the 13th of September in 2001, 3 days after what happened here, she broke with protocol and allowed the Coldstream Guards, when they were changing the guard at Buckingham Palace, to play the Star-Spangled Banner. That's the name of the American national anthem, rather than the UK national anthem, her own national anthem. She allowed that to happen, and Americans here have never forgotten it.
Sweden is voting in parliamentary elections with Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson potentially at risk. Andersson has very high personal approval ratings, but polls say her Social Democrat Party could lose some of their lead, potentially pushing the centre-left coalition from power. The anti-immigration Sweden Democrats are expected to make major gains and could form part of a right-wing coalition. Tennis number one, Iga Swiatek has won the US Open, defeating Tunisia's Ons Jabeur in straight sets in the women's final. The 21-year-old's victory in New York was her second Grand Slam trophy for 2022 and her third overall. The men's final takes place later, with Spanish teenager Carlos Alcaraz facing French Open runner-up Casper Ruud. Celebrations are underway around the world to mark the Mid-Autumn Festival. In Paris, China's ambassador to France took a cruise on the River Seine to mark the occasion, before commenting that relations between Paris and Beijing are moving in a positive direction. CGTN's Sarah Coates has more from Paris.
Well, you couldn't really ask for a more beautiful way to bring in Mid-Autumn Festival here in Paris than with a cruise along the Seine River. Traditional Chinese music, traditional Chinese dancing, and of course mooncakes. Now everyone here is just in such a great spirit, especially given that the last few years celebrations have really been dampened or hampered, so to say, by coronavirus. Now we spoke to the Chinese ambassador to France, who tells me it's a very special time for families.
Les Chinois, qui le soient. Chinese people all over the world respect this tradition. So no matter where you are, when you meet a Chinese person, you have a very close feeling. I think that this festival and tradition has a special meaning today because there are many confrontations and contradictions in the world at the moment. If we are on good terms, there will be fewer problems.
Well, Chinese-French relations also up for discussion, with the ambassador telling me that he remains very optimistic for the future.
The relations between our countries have a very solid foundation laid by our leaders of the last generations, with Mao Zedong and General de Gaulle. And now, under the strategic leadership of our two heads of state, President Xi Jinping and President Macron, the development of bilateral relations is taking a good direction, and especially the pragmatic cooperation between our two countries that has recorded good results. Therefore, I believe that we can take this relationship to a higher level.
And while this is the official celebration to kick off this three-day festival, there are, of course, many other events taking place right across Paris. And I'm hearing that these Chinese bakeries in some of the districts very close to where we are now are already pumping out thousands and thousands of mooncakes. I'm Sarah Coates for CGTN in Paris.
The 15th day of the 8th month on the Chinese lunar calendar marks the beginning of the Mid-Autumn Festival. Mooncakes are an essential part of the celebrations. Classic fillings include lotus seed paste with egg yolk, sweet bean paste and custard. In recent years, some new fillings have been tried out, but not to everyone's taste, as reporter Liu Jiaxin found out.
Hey guys, it's Mid-Autumn Festival, when a typical snack becomes absolutely indispensable. The mooncake. My colleague prepares me some surprising mooncakes with what they called interesting flavors. Shall we start? It's actually sweet, but a little bit salty, maybe because of the meat. I can tell there's meat. It's nutty and chewy. I'd say it's 5 kernels of meat mooncake. Am I right? That is correct. Oh, and it smells strong. I hope it hasn't affected anyone else in the office. Well, I can tell there's sour bean, sour bamboo shoots, and even snail, and some rice noodles. It's from Liuzhou, right? If you ever make it to the city, you are sure of a warm welcome and a large bowl of luosifen. But I mean, we don't usually put like spicy ingredients inside a mooncake. Totally far beyond. All right, one last, and then we're all set. Oh, it's definitely leek. You know, leeks do have their own, you know, special smell and taste. It's usually cooked with egg. Leek egg pancake is kind of a home-cooked dish. It's really common. But this combination is definitely my first ever experience. Are we done?
Yes. So
Oh, thank goodness.
What's your least favorite?
螺蛳粉. That was really crazy. I mean, I like snail's rice noodles. A lot of people are crazy about this snack in Liuzhou. But this combination with mooncake, because the skin of the mooncake, it's sweet, you know, and it's really complicated to fill it with something spicy. Yeah, and sour. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, everybody has their own preferences in terms of the flavors of the mooncake. What's more important is the meaning of the mooncake: reunion, completeness, and happiness for the whole family. I'm Liu Jiaxin reporting for CGTN in Beijing.
You're watching CGTN. Our top stories again. The coffin of Queen Elizabeth II has arrived at the official Scottish residence, Holyrood House, where it will lie at rest in the throne room. The Queen's final journey began hundreds of kilometres away in Balmoral. Thousands of people lined the route to watch the procession go past. And UN monitors say backup power has been restored to the Zaporizhia nuclear plant as Ukrainian forces retake more ground in the northeast. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. Remember, we're on smart TV, apps Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app, and in the UK 24 hours a day on Freeview. More news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's Razor. For now, from all of the team in London, goodbye.